Good morning. Once again, we are having our spirituality session with Chaplain Martin Edward Ohajunwa. We continue our series of discussion and reflection with Howard Thurman, our spiritual theologian and guide. Today, as we begin the autumn of 2020, the fourth season, we can feel it from the cold breeze, the cool breeze, the cold weather setting upon us. And the days are beautiful. We just moved away from summer to autumn. So there are seasons and times for everything. So that has made me, I'm going to reflect with you today the seasons and how Howard Thurman has infused into his reflection no life without war and affliction, but at the same time talking about times and seasons and the things that accompany times and season. Our point of departure today, we're going to read from the Christian Bible, the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. And I want to read from this man of wisdom who had recounted succinctly the times and seasons for everything. And I want to read. There is a season for everything, a time for every occupation under heaven, a time for giving birth, a time for dying, a time for planting, a time for uprooting what has been planted, a time for killing, a time for healing, a time for knocking down, a time for building, a time for tears, a time for laughter, a time for mourning, a time for dancing, a time for throwing stones away, a time for gathering them, a time for embracing, a time to refrain from embracing, a time for searching, a time for losing, a time for keeping, a time for discarding, a time for tearing, a time of sowing, a time for keeping silent, a time for speaking, a time for loving, a time for hating, a time for war, a time for peace. This is from the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verses 1 through 8. And with it we can begin to journey with our spiritual guide, Howard Thurman. For whatsoever plans I shall devise for my own peace, my life cannot be without war and affliction. It is something sometimes we try to avoid because by our default, we always want to imagine peace and harmony. But because there are times for everything under the sun, there is a time for peace and there is a time for war. And in our journey in life, Howard Thurman is saying, we cannot run away from war and affliction. For of what purpose is war and affliction? I'm not proposing and projecting that we are going to have any war and affliction, but already we are being afflicted by the corona pandemic. And we hear of wars all the time. So as we move into this season of autumn, when the leaves start drying up and the trees begin to change colors, we know that something is happening. The leaves are shedding, the trees are shedding their leaves. And a new reality is dawning before us. So our Therman is saying something here for us, that which is fundamental is the admission of peace and war in our life pathways. Natural to have a plan for one's life. It is normal. It is what it should be. It is a possibility whether we make sense out of life's experiment or not. There are different kinds of us. Those who by temperament are orderly. These people do not contemplate any action in the absence of a well-defined plan. From sunrise to sunset, there is a set plan for the day and the journey to embark upon. There are different kinds of us. There are those for whom order or planning comes hard. Many may have been anticipating the fall season and we're asked to go and take our flu shots. We're encouraged to have it because the flu season is coming upon us. The weather is going to get colder by the day. There is also the anticipation that we are going to have a second spike of the pandemic. We pray it doesn't happen. And we pray to a higher power that God may deliver us from the worst of this pandemic. We've had enough for the year, enough of the afflictions. But it is also a scientific projection. And then because there is this kind of scientific projection, there are those of us who will anticipate that to prepare for that. So we are talking about the second set of people, the orderly people. And then we are talking about those who find it difficult to make preparation in life, always procrastinating and living each day, like our Therman would call it, in a breathless confusion. They depend upon chance and particular circumstances to determine what must be done or what cannot be done. Our Therman says they live their lives in such a state of extended crisis. You better ask yourself, do I live my life in a state of extended crisis? Procrastinating, kicking the ball down the road. There is another group of the in-between, between those who are orderly and those who are not so orderly, who procrastinate. These are those who oscillate between pattern and plan, and they lose structure. They are not so rigid with ordering, and they are not as careless as living in an extended crisis. However, they adapt to what the moment calls for. The moment today calls us into a new season of autumn, the autumn of 2020. We don't even know what the autumn will bring for us, but we are certain that it will come and it is here with us. So in these first few days of autumn, we are going to begin to make some adjustments. Our clothes, bringing out our jackets, our caps, making sure we have gloves, and putting on something to keep us warm. That is how we can prepare, at least, the physical aspect of human nature. However, and wherever we may place ourselves, whether you belong to the first group or the second group or the in-between, something seems certain. There is a sense in which our lives move in a certain pattern. A pattern that identifies with what we like or may dislike. What is it that we like? And what is it that we don't like? What we like or we might not like. The goals we have for ourselves, our vocation in life, our personal fulfillment, our family life, our status, our position. What happens in this sequence is a continuous movement to exclude the things that would make for conflict and turmoil, and to include the things that will make for peace and tranquility. With all these factors, social factors, they influence our action, and we work towards a certain pattern or goal. What makes for peace and tranquility, and avoiding those things that cause conflict and turmoil. This is our intention. He speaks about the great spiritual theologian Thomas à Kempis. You know, the Thomas à Kempis was a very great, I'll call him a spiritual man. In the bid to please God, he wanted to be so perfect. Thomas à Kempis had issue with his sexuality. In order not to have a feelings, he went on to castrate himself. Eventually, during the process of his canonization, it was found out that he castrated himself, and that denied him that canonization. Besides that, he was a very holy man. He wrote The Imitations of Christ, a Christian classic. It helps us in our journey for devout life. So, our sermon takes us to Thomas à Kempis, who recognizes that the nature of human life as consisting in what he calls war and affliction is part of our horizon and will always be part of our experience. But Thomas à Kempis wants us to see in the path of the knowledge of God, the Judeo-Christian God, helps us to deal with this inevitable reality of our life. So this is part of life. We cannot deny it. It is part of the life process. It is not to frighten us. No. But it keeps reminding us of the necessity to be watchful and the awareness to process whatever may be our human experience. Our Thurman goes on to say, how can we be conscious? How can we be more creating that awareness to recognize to understand that in whatever plan we have, we must work to win the right to achieve it. To achieve what? To achieve a purpose. The success that we need over and against the probability of failure. Over and above the probability of failure. He puts it this way. This is not a note of pessimism and futility. It is rather a recognition that conflict is part of our life process. Whatever may be the plan which one has for one's life, one must win the right to achieve it. Again and again in the struggle, a man may experience failure, but he must know for himself that even though such is his experience, the final word has not been spoken. I enjoy this man's writing so much. The final word has not been spoken, that even if failure should come our way, failure can come our way when we fall short of our set goal, our patterned life. When we do not achieve what we intend to achieve, that could be beneficial to us. When our life story is not all a success, we have become inhibited by illness, by our struggles, by our challenges, by our using, by the kind of friends we have kept over the years, by the kind of dysfunctional family we may be coming from, by the kind of vocation we have chosen. And because of that vocation, we have moral injuries, we have spiritual injuries, we have PTSD, we could have MOST. All those factors may inhibit the journey to success, what we may call a successful and peaceful, healthy and happy life. But our sermon is giving us some inspiration and at the same time some encouragement. And that encouragement is something we need to stick to, listen to and stick to. He says in the final word on this probability of failure, whether it is a probability of failure or determined failure, the final word is still not spoken. We must keep forging ahead. We must keep going. We must keep walking. We must keep hoping. We must keep living. We must keep struggling. In the good old days when I was in college back home, there is this motto for our students' union, and it says, "A luta continua." It's a Spanish word to say the struggle continues. That when you come into the university, the struggle continues. The struggle to be a person. The struggle to assert your identity. The struggle to get the golden fleece. The struggle to succeed and to become a man, a woman, and become a person, fully matured, exposed and ready for the world. It helps us as undergraduate students not to give up. In the cold wind, you hear it is winter, over there it is harmattan. You get up very early in the morning, have your lamp, you go to study in the school. No matter how chilly it is, you get encouraged by those words, a luta continua. The struggle continues. That is to say, as part of the plan in human progress is this: the possibility of failure, and that we will not escape struggle, conflict, or war. In the possibility of failure, as determined, as inevitable as it may sound, and as it may come, we are not escaping struggle and conflict and war. Let us look at this as a metaphor of the various challenges that come our way in human experience. These are the hurdles of life. Maybe one's childhood experience of a poverty and hunger. No 3 square meals, no good health care, no potable water, no good education system. It could be the sense of adolescent abandonment to fend for yourself. Broken family, the father and mother not living together, you are left to fend for yourself. Living in a very dangerous neighborhood. Having to trade with drugs. Being forced to initiate into gangs and fraternities that are violent. Being exposed to all sorts of danger. It can happen in adolescent age. It could also be the racism we may have encountered. Not being regarded because of your color, or being mistreated because of your color, not listened to because of your color or race. Being rejected or denied of what one thinks is his or her due. For some reasons, nobody wants to listen to you. You are judged wrongly. It can happen. Or it can come as a result of a sour relationship or a broken marriage. The relationship with your spouse or your other half is not working out well. It has become toxic. Infidelity, unfaithfulness, lack of care. Any of those things can be factors of failure. They intimidate us. They diminish us. They pull our legs from walking, from dancing, from running, from stepping up. They tie our hands like shackles, and we don't feel free, even though we are living in a free world. Howard Thurman's challenges us As it comes towards the end of the reflection, he says, with these words of Mr. Valiant for Truth in Pilgrim's Progress, my sword I give to him that shall succeed me in my pilgrimage, and my courage and skill to him that can get it. My marks and my scars I carry with me, to be a witness for me that I have fought his battle, who will be my rewarder. Those are the words of Mr. Valiant for Truth in Pilgrim's Progress. And I want to repeat it. My sword I give to him that shall succeed me in my pilgrimage. So there is a handing overness of the source of strength and a symbol of his strength. And my courage and skill to him that can bear it. He is ready to share. However, my marks and my scars, the things that have come from his experience from being the valiant for truth, the man, the warrior of truth. He came with marks and scars. He says he will carry those with him so that they may be the witnesses for me, for him that has borne the pains of battle. And he will present it before his higher power, who will be his rewarder. However, there is something we can hand over to others to continue the journey. These are the tools that help us to succeed if you have succeeded in different places. Because our stories are not always about war and conflict. War and conflict are inevitable, but we have our victory stories. At least that we are alive today is a success story. Whatever may be the path through which we have found ourselves where we are. These are the tools that helped us to succeed. These are the tools for others to emulate. Let us tell our stories to strengthen others. Let it be a source of inspiration for others. It is important. Let us keep the scars. Let us take with us the scars of our effort as noble witnesses before the eternal rewarder, who awaits to reward us for a fight well fought, a life well lived, the hope that we have won, the faith that is our victory before the Lord of hosts. That is the other side of the failure and the other side of the victory. This is what we can take home. In the sunset of Paul, the apostle's life, he wrote, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. What awaits me is the crown of righteousness, which the Lord will grant him. Paul saw his life being poured out like a libation, and he sees his transition from this earthly sojourning to another life. And he was courageous and confident and proud to say he has fought a good fight. He has finished the race. Not because it was all rosy, but because in the thorns and thistles, he kept his eyes on the roses. There is no life without war and affliction. We should not be afraid of the war and affliction. We should rather count our blessings. That should be our story, our inspiration, our encouragement. And that is what we can use to strengthen others. May our higher power help us to always keep our eyes focused on the roses, to tell the stories of our victories, not to forget the scars we carry because of our struggles and pains and challenges and failures. But over and above that, we are living today. That we are living, no matter how the life may be, we have blessings to count. I welcome you to the new season of fall. As we move into this cold season, let us be mindful that we should always be prepared for everything the world offers us. Thank you again for listening, and I wish you a beautiful day. See you again sometime, same time next week. God bless you. Chaplain Martin.